it's important to keep creating human-generated content. I mean, if hypothetically we entered a world where all text was just written by AI, humans would kind of lose control of our language, and we're not really sure I'm not really sure that's a good idea. So I think it's really important to keep having humans writing things and creating things. On the consumer level, I think consumers really want to know whether they're consuming content created by human or by AI. Yeah, people just really want to know that, right? If they're reading a book and they find out the book was written by AI, people are very uncomfortable with that.
Hello, and welcome to the Media Copilot. It's a podcast that explores how AI is changing media, journalism, and content creation. I'm Pete Pachal, longtime tech journalist and founder of the Media Copilot, and I'm excited to bring you fascinating conversations with fellow journalists, media executives, and the people building how the business of news and content will work in the future. My guest today is Trip Adler. If that name rings a bell, it's because he co-founded Scribd, one of the first major digital publishing platforms that helped writers and readers connect long before Kindle Unlimited or Substack came along. Now Trip is turning his attention to one of the biggest unresolved issues in the AI era: how creators get paid. Not to mention maintain control when their work is used to train large language models. Trip's new company, Created by Humans, is building a marketplace where authors can license their work directly to AI companies. It's a novel approach to attention that you could say is definitely growing, and it's one that sits right between copyright law, technology, and the economics of creativity. If it's successful, Creating by Humans could become a cornerstone of what some are calling the new creator rights stack, the emerging infrastructure that will define how human content flows into AI systems. We talk about his vision for a fairer AI ecosystem, what he calls the fourth law of robotics, and how he interprets the recent Anthropic settlement and the ongoing lawsuits between creators and AI companies. Most importantly, we explore whether there's a sustainable middle ground between protecting creators and fueling innovation. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and if you do, I'd be grateful if you'd leave a review for this podcast. Reviews, especially in Apple and Spotify, really do help the show. Please leave one if you can. Please and thank you. Two more quick notes. One, I'm offering a monthly class on AI for beginners. It's only 60 minutes, and like everything I do, it's focused on practical takeaways for media professionals, people in journalism, public relations, or communications. And it's only $49. Each one's a live class, so it's always up to date, and I guarantee you'll walk away with something you can apply to your day-to-day. You can sign up at mediacopilot.ai. Also, for deeper training on AI, I offer two different 6-week courses that are starting in November. One's for journalists, the other's for PR and comms. They're loaded with lessons on things like deep research, how to automate workflows, and building your own AI agent. You can sign up for these where else? Mediacopilot.ai. Okay, now it's time for my conversation with Trip Adler, co-founder and CEO of Created by Humans. Trip, welcome to the Media Copilot.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Awesome. It's great to have you here. I love that you're here, and I love your background because you are obviously one of the co-founders of Scribd, which to me is home of the original content ingested on someone else's platform idea. Now you're focused on that in sort of a completely different arena. That's probably a little more complicated. So I can't really think of anyone better who would understand all the dimensions of what's happening with AI and content, and especially on the ground level. So yeah, tell us a little bit, about that background, since, like my listeners might not be super familiar with what you did with Scribd and, how that path led you to Created by Humans.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, I started Scribd when I was just out of college in 2007, and started as a way to publish and share documents on the web. Of course, there was all sorts of copyright issues that we faced there. So quickly got a pretty good crash course in how copyright works and how the DMCA works. Through that, I got to know the book publishing community really well. Started to really understand what that whole industry was about, and then expanded Scribd to pioneer the subscription model for books. So we worked with publishers of all kinds to put that model in place, and grew that up into a big business with It's a big scale business now with over billion users, over 200 million revenue, and yeah, in the
Nice.
process, I got to know the book industry really well. I got to know the tech industry really well, and then when this AI situation came along, all it was a kind of a new collision of the book industry, the tech industry, but in a new way. And all these books were trained on without first checking in with the authors and the publishers, and it resulted in a bunch of lawsuits. And I actually had a lot of people in the book industry reaching out to me, asking me for my advice on what to do about this situation. I had people in Silicon Valley asking me questions about the book industry, and I just figured that this just seemed like the right thing, the right problem to solve, is to try to bring these two worlds together and get a model that connects the book industry and the content industry more broadly in the AI industry, and started Created by Humans to try to solve this problem. And we're making some good progress in solving it.
Nice. So tell me the central thrust of Created by Humans, but also beyond just the sort of mission and why it even exists, where it kind of fits into this whole sort of myriad web of content and AI. There's a lot of stuff. You might even say there's like a legal stack as an addition to sort of a software stack on this,
Yep.
and it sort of depends on where which party you are, what the sort of precedent is. I don't know. There's a million sort of dimensions to look at it. We'll unpack as many of them as we can in the time we have together. But let's just start with the fundamentals. What's Scribd doing, and then again, where does it fit?
You mean what Created by Humans is doing? Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
sorry, created by humans, not Scribd.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, confusing.
sorry.
Multiple companies here.
No, that's me. That's just my age. I remember Scribd. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Go.
Um, Yeah, so we started Created by Humans to try to solve this problem. When we started the company, we really we had no idea how to solve it. We just looked at it. We're like, well, this seems like a really tricky situation, and we're like, well, someone's got to sort this out, because either copyright law is going to just disappear, or copyright is gonna hinder AI innovation, and we thought neither of those were kind of good solutions. So we started this to just try to solve the problem and create a world where copyright is respected. Humans keep creating great things, and then meanwhile, there's a business model for how that interacts with the world of AI. And AI products can be built with copyrighted content, and AI can thrive, and human generated content can thrive, and these two can kind of work together. So we started just trying to solve that problem, and where we've been building a lot to solve this. It's just not one thing. But where we started with was kind of like the legal piece, which is building an inbound outbound licensing model. Because when we
Right.
first heard that the reason why these AI companies didn't want to or didn't just wanted to trend everything without licensing, is just it was too complicated to license, because
Yeah.
there's millions of books out there. In order to clear the AI rights, you have to get the publisher on board. You have to get the authors, and then there's multiple authors. There's illustrators. It gets very complicated. So what we've the first kind of approach to taking to solving this is basically clearing these rights for these books. We had to define the AI rights, and then start to clear them for books, and then make that into a super easy package that AI companies can then license. And this way, they can get the data they need, and just make it really easy for AI companies, but also make it easy for creators, and just make it easy for everyone overall.
So, okay, so the whole idea is that you're going to the publishers and then through them advising them, getting them to, I suppose, adjust their contracts with the writers and getting their writers on board for these rights for AI to do stuff with their works, right? And
Yep.
that sounds like a big process in and of itself. But the dimensions of like what AI can do with it, I'm actually really interested in, because it's like can you sort of summarize how that breaks down? Because there's like training, there's RAG, there's agents. I don't know if this cover your contracts cover all of that, but what is like a that I guess section of these contracts? How has it sort of evolved? Like what can an AI do with one of these if it is cleared?
Yeah, so the first thing we did is we defined this concept of AI rights. Right,
Okay.
when AI came along and it collided with the content world, there was no like structure for how AI rights should work. So we defined the concept of AI rights, and we realized there are actually three types of AI rights. I mean, there might be more over time, but we've started by defining three that we think largely capture what needs to be captured. So it pretty similar to what you just mentioned. So the first one is training rights. This is the right to for a piece of content to be used by AI models for training. The second is what we call reference rights, which is the ability to use content for RAG. We call it reference rights because it's kind of like more of a booky word. It's like the idea that these AI models can reference the book using RAG. And then the third category of AI rights, we call them transformative rights, and that's the ability to take a piece of content and transform it into something new using AI.
Interesting.
Because in the future, you could take a book and you could personalizing it with AI. You can adjust the length with AI. You can you can turn it into a movie with AI. I mean, you can do all sorts of things. So we're building what we call the transformative rights framework for that. So that's kind of how we've defined it so far.
Wow, that's interesting. I'd really want to sort of dive into that in a bit. So as I understand, you've also kind of got this, I don't know if how literal this is, but I was reading about you've defined sort of a fourth law of robotics or something sort of off of the Asimov laws. Is that at a higher level than this sort of specific stuff we've just been talking about in terms of like what's guiding the principles here? Can you explain what that is? Like for those that don't know, the three laws of robotics are like the do no harm or don't harm humans. Maybe you could explain like whether those apply and what this fourth law is.
Yeah, so we created this legal framework for AI rights, but we realized to really solve this, we had to kind of get a little philosophical here,
Yeah.
because when we first started on this path, there's arguments being made, and this argument still being made, that since a human has the ability to read all the books they want and then communicate what they learn from those books, therefore AI models should also be able to do the same thing. And this didn't really feel right to us. We thought that I mean, human can only read and communicate so many books in their life. An AI model can in a matter of moments read millions of books and then distribute that to the whole world. So we thought that
Right.
we needed a new way of thinking about this. And yeah, we were inspired by Isaac Asimov. He created the three laws of robotics, and he basically said like in the future you're going to need certain rules to regulate the relationship between humans and robots. And what we realized is that we need a fourth law here, which is a law that regulates how robots can learn from human behavior and human creative output. And basically what the fourth law says is that if a robot wants to, or an AI model wants to learn from a human, such as like training on their book, this should happen in a way that benefits the human and the robot. And there's five principles underpinning the fourth law. There's humans have the right to consent to their data being used. They have the right to control how their data is used. They have the right to get compensated for it or negotiate compensation for it. They should get credit for it. And then there should be continuous learning of how these. There should be like a pipeline where the robots can always be learning from the latest and greatest creations of humans. So that's what the fourth law is. We created this as kind of like a philosophical framework, and then we built the legal model of AI rights kind of around that framework.
Nice. Okay. And so that's all that's all great on a high level. Then we've just sort of talked about a little bit of how it works on the sort of practical level of what are the ways AI can use the content. And I imagine you're starting with books, but you're sort of coming at this from a little bit of like what content agnostic or format agnostic, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, our vision is to do this for all content, all human data. We've already started dabbling with some other content types like music and medical papers and things like that. But we realized that like that's a huge problem to solve, and we wanted to pick one type of content and really solve it for
Yeah.
that first before we expand. So we've basically gotten laser focused on books, and we're trying to just solve this once and for all for books, and then once we do that, we can expand that to all kinds of content.
Yeah, and the framework's straightforward, and I think a lot of these sort of proposals around this tend to be like, "Oh, I get it. You can ingest it. It pays a certain amount to do that, and then if it's doing RAG, it's doing there's something there's fees associated with all of this, and it's all kind of done automatically in the background once all those have been agreed to." What I wonder about is like how much, right? Like, and then what is a fair rate for each one of these things, depending on what the book is and um, how much is being tapped for any one of these things. I imagine training looks a lot different than RAG, depending on the popularity of the book for number one or the information it has.
Hmm.
So, like how is that? determined, and what sort of counts as a fair rate these days, like particularly for training? Does that even mean is that even meaningful anymore? Like, I feel like the training argument has sort of evolved a lot. It used to be all about training. Now we like all realize, oh, inference is actually probably going to be the
Hmm.
thing going forward. How do you sort of apportion that, and how like what is how do you figure out what is a fair rate for any of these particular actions that the AI is doing on the information?
Yeah, I mean that's the big question, and I don't think there's a simple answer to it. Well, I guess the simple answer is that we're going to let the market decide by creating like a framework where rights holders have the ability to decide what deals they do, and AI companies can negotiate the deals they want to do. We think with each deal that gets done, you kind of gradually move toward market rates, and as over time there's more and more deals done, there'll just start to be kind of standardized rates around this. Um, yeah, the numbers currently are all over the place. I mean, of course, some companies argue trading's fair use and they should trade nothing. Some we're doing one deal right now where the company is paying a very large amount per book. So it really just depends. There's kind of like a really wide range of thoughts on pricing. I think the market will just determine it over time. Um, the other thing is like it also depends on the right. I mean, I think training versus reference RAG versus transformative are going to be very different models. Typically training the way AI companies like to do is like just pay once and have perpetual use of the content. Something like RAG or transformative, there's more of like a variable component going forward. Like with transformative, for example, you're transforming a book into something new, which is it's kind of like another version of a book sale. So there's just very
Right.
different models for each of these rights, and we think we'll just let the market kind of determine over time.
Yeah, I remember, I forget the precise model, but I was talking with another CEO about it's kind of similar, it was about music. And it was about if you wanted to sample someone's voice that they had put on this platform that you could sample. So say you're, I don't know, Drake, just because he's been he's been already through this, and then you licensed the voice, and then you sold AI music based around that voice. There'd be obviously a for someone like a Drake, the commission would be massive. Right? It would be whatever 50, maybe even more than 50%, and that would be kind of a similar model here, I would imagine, for the transformative stuff. So someone takes your book and transforms it, and then obviously the rights holder is going to enjoy a large amount. I imagine they'd set it themselves on what that portion would be.
Yeah, exactly. I think that like
Yeah.
there's going to be, different rates for different people. I mean, best-selling book would be different from a book that's not as big of a seller. And it depends also on like whether the book is being transformed and the entire book is being reproduced, or if it's like a RAG use case, an AI product might just be getting one sentence out of a book, in which case that's a totally different model. So I guess we believe there's so much value in books, and books have always been used in this kind of linear way where they're sort of like read from beginning to end. I mean, it started to change a little bit with things like searching within books, but AI just creates like infinite possibilities for what can be done with books, and we're just trying to unlock that through this new rights framework, but do it in a way that's in accordance with the fourth law, where the author is maintaining control and getting compensated and all of that.
So if a writer wants to join Created by Humans or wants to get involved, I mean, is it through the publisher? Can they do a self-serve thing? How does that work?
Yeah, so we work with authors and with publishers. So when we started on this path, we started talking to publishers, and what came up over and over is that these AI rights have never been defined, and if they're not defined, that means that they're owned by the author, or at least it's a shared right between the author and the publisher. So in order to unlock this opportunity, we do need to work directly with authors. So we have built a platform where authors can sign up directly. So it's self serve. It's very easy to use. An author can sign up. They verify their identity. They select the books they want to license. They select the AI rights they want to license, and then they sign an agreement which licenses those AI rights to Created by Humans. It's very self-serve and very easy to use. So if you're listening to this and you're an author, we would love for you to sign up and give it a try. And it's a way that you can start to take control of your AI rights rather than just kind of AI companies just sort of using your books in a way you know what's going on. This is actually where you can take control. You can get compensated, and you can have some visibility into what's going on.
Yes. So let's talk about the sort of compliance enforcement side of this, which is always kind of a bit, I don't know, elusive maybe. So you get, I think probably less worried about like the people who AI companies that um, might. Well, actually, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that first before we get to like the rogue operators. So how does this
Yep.
work on that side of things, and what interest have you seen from AI services and maybe even frontier services that on like what interest they have in working with sort of a broker, I guess a rights broker like you, like created by humans.
Yeah, well, it really depends. I mean, there's certainly some AI companies that are just have the opinion they're just gonna kind of train on whatever data they can access and it's fair use, and they're not working very directly with creators. And there are some that really want to do this right, and they want to make sure everything is has the full approval of creators. So it's really been a mix. And yeah, we're not just doing the licensing. We also are building the infrastructure here around monitoring and enforcement, analytics, all of that. So because a lot of content owners they are sort of distrustful of what can be pinched on with their content, and by kind of building like a platform that sits in between the rights holder and the AI company, we can kind of like develop more trust with rights holders and make them more willing to license and more willing to be more experimental with what is done with their content. So that's kind of a whole other piece of what we're building out, is that infrastructure layer.
Nice. So maybe then just keeping with the sort of reality of AI companies and what they think and what we've seen in the last few months. I think everyone's kept up with some of the bigger lawsuits, and one of them was the Anthropic settlement that happened. I forget what that was, probably a couple months ago now. And I'd like to understand how you view that, or how it's sort of being also interpreted in not just the author community but the publishing community. So the ruling, as I understood it, it was kind of split. It was kind of saying that, like, I don't know if it was definitive, but it sort of implied that Anthropic had some um, ability to train on these books as long as they paid for them. And then there was a little big thing about the pirated books that was not okay, so it ended up being settled. That's very broad strokes, I know, but maybe you could sort of break down what is cause for maybe concern, cause for optimism in that ruling, because I think there's a bit of a maybe misinterpretation. You'd probably call it, certainly probably not thinking about it this way, but the idea that they could just buy a book legitimately, ingest it, and then they could do whatever they want with it. I don't think that's necessarily what the ruling said, but I feel like there's a sort of a conventional wisdom that like is sort of emerging post that. I know it's not the final word, but uh, tell me what you thought about that lawsuit, how it's affected what you've been able to do, and then where that sort of legal fight is going from here. Do you just on the sort of broad level? Sorry, that was a long question.
Oh no, it makes sense. Yeah. Um, so I think that the lawsuit has and the settlement has mostly just been about piracy. From what I could tell, I think that the main point of that settlement was that the books were pirated, and that Anthropic used them without buying them, and that's copyright infringement. And there was a payment of $3,000 a book for the piracy of the books. So I think that makes sense. I think that's a good thing that it's being established that an AI company, just the way an individual consumer can't pirate a book, an AI company also can't pirate a book, right? If they want to work with a book, they at least need to pay for it. So I think that was kind of the resolution there, and I think it seems like a lot of AI companies have pirated books, from what I can tell. So it seems like there's probably gonna be a lot more of these piracy settlements going forward. So I think just in that alone, there's probably gonna be a lot of money going from AI companies to authors and publishers. The
Right,
second
but the flip
question.
side. Oh, so go ahead.
Yeah, well, so the second question is, so let's say the company does buy the book.
Yeah.
Can they train that for free, or is there an additional payment to train on the book? And I think that's still very much unresolved. I think the judge in the case made public comments that training is fair use, but I think that it's still very much unresolved. A lot of people like to talk about this, about whether training is fair use, like a binary question. I don't really think it's binary. I think there's a lot of gray area, and it really just depends on what when the training happens, what's done with that work. And I think there's going to be a lot of different legal outcomes, because there's so many more lawsuits. I mean, this is just the first of many to come. So I really think it's still early days in terms of this question of whether training is fair use. And I think the ultimate answer is it's not going to be black and white. There's going to be kind of a middle ground solution there.
Yeah, it's also like why I think the model of sort of separating it the way you have is important because information and training it can't like it informs the model broadly, and then that information tends to come up whenever it's kind of needed. And again, I know I'm broad generalizing here, but it might not even, in other words, the query might not even be about the book. You know what I
Yep.
mean? It may just come up. And so in a query where it's directly about the book, and again, use whatever term you want if it's another piece of work other than book, but the idea that like, oh, well, now I know you want something very specific. The intent here is to get material, and that maybe it's a much clearer line of why there should be compensation, and
Exactly.
likewise
Yeah.
transformative because it goes even further. So
Yep.
like that just kind of like seems like okay, it's okay to parse it that way. And to your point, like it's not monolithic. It's not like one and done. It's these are different acts with different intents.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's it's one thing to like train a book and maybe use that book to learn the English language better. It's another thing to take that book and then reproduce a pretty good summary of that book that's made available to consumers, right? We would argue that's more of a transformative use. So one of the things we're doing is kind of drawing those lines. We're defining what is a training use, what is a transformative use, and creating like real licensing model around these different concepts and drawing clear lines so that we could start to be more clear about this.
Gotcha. So, um, so how do you design a licensing model that isn't too granular in that sense, to scale or too broad in protecting rights? How do you think about that in terms of like where's the right balance?
Yeah, I think it's really tricky, and that's what we're working on figuring out. I mean, to date, we've had these three buckets: training, reference, transformative. I mean, I think ultimately transformative is going to break into more subrights, and we're starting to define that because there's like there's a transformative summary right, there's a transformative chatbot right, there's a transformative book to video right. I mean, these are all going to be separate subrights, and we're trying to define all this. So I mean, it's an ongoing thing, and I think each deal starts to establish a little more precedent, and over time, we'll start to have like a broader picture, a broader answer to it. But I think it's like that. That's the work we're doing. Is we're working on solving right now.
And how do you deal with what I imagine you're encountering a lot of default skepticism and frankly, probably antagonism from the creator side, a large portion of which feel like this AI is taking over. It's ingested things. They just want to lock everything down. I imagine there's a bit of education that you have to sort of do when you walk into one of these publisher meetings or even talking to authors broadly.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's a lot of education, and there is a lot of just kind of general anti AI sentiment where people just like don't their books have anything to do with AI. But the good news is there is like a number of folks out there who are really enthusiastic about AI. And we do have a lot of authors and publishers that we're working with who are really enthusiastic about this. And I think we have enough support from enough authors and publishers that we can kind of get this model going. And I think once we prove it out, we'll get more folks on board. So it just takes a matter of time. It's like with Scribd, we started the subscription model. Everyone thought that was a crazy idea to subscribe for books, but we managed to get a few publishers on board, and then that led to more getting on board, and then eventually kind of it just became sort of like understandable people would subscribe for books, and I think we'll see it play out similarly here, where once we kind of prove it out with the first early adopters, and then we can expand to more broadly from there.
And on the other side of things, with the AI companies, and how are incentives there changing with these court rulings that we were just talking about, but also with the sentiment you're talking about bubbling up. Surely, as these things stack up, maybe they're more incentivized to start making deals. Or is anything shifting their behavior? Like, what is your sense on that area directionally?
Well, I think for certain type of rights, things like reference rights, those deals are happening quite a bit. I mean, that's already been happening for a couple of years, and there's more and more of these rag deals needing to be done. Transformative deals, there's I think less just because it hasn't really been defined yet. But as we're defining it, I think we're seeing a lot of interest on that. I mean, we're probably seeing the most interest in transformative rights
Mm.
of all the different rights we have. Training is the one that's the big question. I mean, that's the most legally complex one. Unfortunately, like no one even really wants to talk about it because it's so legally complex and there's so many lawyers involved. So I think it's really unclear where it goes. I think this Anthropic case is it's a big step, but I think there's a lot more to play out here. So I think training is the most up in the air. But I think over time, just as there's more of these lawsuits get resolved, as there's more and more deals done, as we are doing, it'll just over time start to work itself out.
And I'm just a bit of a tangent here, maybe, but I'm curious about AI authorship because I know the Copyright Office has been a little bit, I don't know, they've gone widening, I guess, on this stance on this, on if something is not necessarily wholly written by AI, but at least partially AI, that can be copyrighted. Depends on the case. I don't know if you've kept up with that or seen any sort of test cases with it, but how does that kind of a weird wild card factor in all this, or is it just kind of a footnote for right now?
Um, I'm not sure. I would say I don't really have like anything good to say about that or anything smart to say. 'Cause it's a really complicated issue. Yeah, I mean, like, if can you copyright something created by AI? I mean, that's a really a really hard question to answer. What I would say though is, we we want to try to draw lines between human generated content and AI content. I mean, we think that like important to keep creating human generated content. I mean, if hypothetically we entered a world where all text was just written by AI, like humans would kind of lose control of our language, and we're not really sure I'm not really sure that's a good idea. So I think it's really important to keep having humans, writing things and creating things. And then also I think on the consumer level, I think consumers really want to know whether they're consuming content created by by AI. If yeah, like, people just really want to know that, right? If they're reading a book and they find out the book was written by AI, people are very uncomfortable with that. So we want to work to kind of draw these lines between human generated content and AI generated content. There's also a lot of middle ground because I think in the future, right, you might read a book and like some of it's written by AI, some of it's written by humans, and we want to work to sort of like establish kind of standards around that, so that there's just kind of clarity in terms of what you're reading and what you're consuming.
Yeah, as it's actually I'm curious. Like I know when I talk about AI written stuff, it sounds like well, like especially when it's books, right? Because like we all like sitting down with a good book and something human written. But that said, there's a lot of different kinds of books. There's like a lot of
Hmm.
nonfiction books and a lot of how-to books and
Hmm.
cooking books or whatever. And so you can see AI having more of a role in that sort of thing. You could also see the the sort of rights that we were talking about, the three buckets, being very different for a book like that
Hmm.
versus a fiction book. So talk about that a bit. Like how does this change between sort of just the different types of content that is are putting out there? Are there different trends? Are there different things to think about? Different rates on the licensing? How does it look so far? Is it more just kind of we're just getting started to make sure that this framework is in place?
Yeah, I think it's just so early. We're still sorting it out. I mean, the interest in AI companies from different kinds of books is it's really all over the place. I mean, there's interest in there's nonfiction books, there's interest in textbooks, there's interest in fiction, there's interest in cookbooks. I mean, there's just it's all over the place. And yeah, I think there's just different nuances to all these different kinds of content. And um, I think yeah, I think we're these are the kinds of things we're sorting out, right? I mean, because like you talk about like a nonfiction book versus a fiction book, and you want to read something written by a human, but in some cases, you might be okay reading something that's written by AI or partially written by AI. So as long as we're starting to like kind of create clear standards around this and creating clarity with everyone involved, we think that's kind of how it starts to work itself out.
Yeah, I guess how I would sort of think about it is like what's more vulnerable to AI in a sense. You know what I mean? And maybe it's just different nuances to it. Because like with something like a nonfiction book, I can see it the AI summarization actually being sort of a beneficial thing to people, like, oh,
Hmm.
I don't want to read the whole thing, but give me the 10-page version of this book or the 2-page version of this book,
Yep.
or even just some key guides that it has. And
Yep.
having AI do that is valuable. And obviously, there would be, again, I think a system like yours that would sort of manage that. Fiction book, I could still see some things like, say that it's someone like the vast majority of authors who don't have movie deals or TV deals and are like, hey, I would love to see this scene rendered by something like a VO3 or a Sora, like, but use the character, like, show me this scene created by AI. How does that, like, does your model account for all that? Like, and are you actively involved in talks like these, like the use cases, I guess?
I mean, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're talking to companies that want to, you know, turn books into like choose your own adventure books. Where want to turn
That's
books into
cool.
virtual worlds. I mean, there's just infinite things that could be done, and we're trying to like build out the frameworks for this, right? Um, without these frameworks in place, it's too easy for these AI companies to just take the books and just kind of
Right.
do whatever with them. I mean, like what's happening with Sora and these sort of things. But if we can build the framework and make it easy for these AI companies to use our framework and easy for creators to maintain control and have that business model in place, that's kind of how we solve this across the board.
Nice. And imagine there's a lot of like startups that are in the stack that might want to sort of be also in there, not just like the big AI companies that want to do things that are very specific with regard to licensed content.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of interest from startups, and there's so many interesting things going on, and most startups want to license content, do this the right way. It's so hard to navigate the world of rights. It's hard to do as a big company, it's hard to do as a small company, and we're trying to make that really easy for everyone. And I mean, I'm hoping we can drive a lot of startup activity around books. I think that if we can make it really easy for startups to build products on top of books, that there could be like kind of a book industry startup boom, and that's something that we're trying to get going here.
Yeah, I was. I remember one of the first AI experiences that I saw sort of demonstrated was someone uploaded a book into an AI and was like, now you can talk to the book, as a sort of a corpus of content, just sort of
Exactly.
demonstrating that ability. And that's just the most basic 101 level of what you can do. Uh,
Exactly. Yeah. And
so
if we can find a way to like, unlock the value of the IP and protect the IP, but then also, make it something even greater with AI. I mean, it's a huge opportunity. There's just so much could be done.
yeah. So that said, let's project out that opportunity a bit. Let's look 5 years ahead. What does success look like if created by humans catches on in all the ways that you would like it to do? What does it look like for creators? What does it look like for publishers? What does it look like for the AI companies?
Well, I think for authors and publishers, this is hopefully a new revenue model for them. They're getting AI licensing revenue. I think it could be actually a really big revenue source. I mean, for the book industry, there was print books and there was ebooks and there was audiobooks. I mean, we think that AI revenue is the next big revenue source for the industry. I also think that authors and publishers can reach readers in new ways. I mean, it might be that people don't want to read a particular book in its kind of linear form, but if you can present it to the consumer in a new way, you can actually get more engagement on that book. So I think hopefully we'll be able to connect authors and publishers with audiences in new ways. For AI companies, I'm hoping they can be building next generation products, but doing it in a way where they have total confidence they're doing it legally, and they don't have all these lawsuits and all of this angst from the creative community. So I hope it's working that way for them. So I'm hoping we can just kind of make this a win-win for everyone involved.
Nice. There's vision of peace between
Yep, yep, we're
the
peacemakers.
between the human and the machine.
That's what we're trying to do. Yep.
Trip, we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much for taking the time and telling us all about what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. It's great chatting today.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with Trip Adler of Created by Humans. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate it if you'd just take a minute to leave a rating or review for the Media Copilot in your podcast app. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Media Copilot newsletter and check out MediaCopilot.ai for our classes on AI for journalists, PR professionals, and communicators. Be seeing you in the future.